Good evening and welcome to January 26, 2026. This is a very hard day to say. Work session. We will start with roll call.
Okay. Director Cooney,
Present.
DeBeat,
Present.
Dolby,
Present.
Koff,
Present.
Phillips,
Present.
Schneider,
Present.
and Director Scher is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome to all of our visitors and our media representatives. We'll move in to our 2025 Daily Desired Environment Survey results.
Well, settle in because you're going to get a healthy dose of listening to me tonight. We've got two different survey pieces to share with you, the Daily Desired Experience. I think this is year 5 of the survey, so I'll walk through that and talk about kind of where we're at with that and some next steps. We also have a public perception survey that was done that I'll give you kind of an introduction to that survey as well. So starting with DDE here. And again, this is just an overview of the process and what happens year to year. But digging into the data, we'll start with kind of what will be seen on the vision card. So on this particular slide, you can see that just going back the last 3 years, our participation, and this would be specifically for families, has continued to increase. And then when we kind of pool all of the responses together and to determine that kind of level of satisfaction, you can see some strong growth there over these past several years. And then on that far right column, that associated with each of the years, kind of where that fell on our vision card. So in 23-24, we were at a level 1, which is a priority area for improvement. Last year, we moved up to needs improvement, and this year, based on those results, we moved into the commendable level, which is good. Then as I'll shift to the responses by question, and you can kind of see on the right-hand side the 2024 responses by question, and that transition to 2025 also. And so one of the things that you'll notice is in each one of those responses, that score improved, which is really positive to see. We kind of break it out into the pie chart, which you don't see attached here. There is a big shift into that strongly agree, in a reduction in the disagrees and strongly disagrees. So again, some really positive results on the family side. For our staff, we've also seen continued growth in the percent satisfied. The responses, this year the responses went down some, but when we look at a percentage of our total staff, it's really very comparable to where it's been in the past. So you'll also notice on the vision scorecard, the last 2 years, prior 2 years, we were in a level 1 priority. And this year we bumped up to level 2. So again, some improvement there overall. As we get into the responses for the staff, again, comparing 24 to 25, as you go through by question, we've increased in every single question area as well. So again, some positive growth there. And I'll talk a little bit about next steps, and we'll have an opportunity to kind of share some of the themes that you've seen in the comments as we get to the end here. And then the last piece is our students. And again, you'll see we went down this year. We've been down the last couple of years, but you'll see the number of responses increasing over those last 2 years. We went up significantly between last year and this year. I think it was over 600 additional responses just at the high school alone. And so, we feel like we're getting a better snapshot, certainly, of where students are at with that. So I'll flip to the next one. As you look at those responses, the first two questions we did go up, and the rest we went down slightly. But again, given the amount of increase in the responses, when you look back to when we started this 5 years ago, I think we started at 59%. So we've still seen growth from where we started. But we certainly want to keep that number of responses as high as we can. So we feel really good about the number we got for students this year. So we also just wanted to show you over the last couple of years, we take, these results, we share them, was called our District Environment Committee. Now it's our District Leadership team, and that represents every building. We have paraprofessionals on there, we have certified staff, teachers, we have administrators, again, representing all of our buildings that come together. We look at the data. Buildings have an opportunity to dig into their personal building responses and scores there. They walk through and identify areas of growth, celebrations, and then those are shared back with the district group. We take all of that feedback then and start to pull that into some themes and some action plans for each year. So I think it's just important to see over the last couple of years, communication, professional development, behavior supports. Last year, staff celebrations and recognition, time for collaboration, and behavior support. So again, we're seeing some common themes there, and I think you'll see that, you've probably seen that in some of the comments this year as well. So we shared, again, with the District Environment Committee, which is now the District Leadership Team, last week. We got some of their feedback, also as an opportunity for them to plan for this Thursday in the afternoon. At each of the building sites, they'll be working with their whole staff on reviewing these results, and there's a form that they fill out kind of as a building team and walk through those results. Again, that information then gets shared back with the district leadership team, and we'll start pulling those together and building action plans to continue to get better. And that's kind of the process, and then we'll continue to come back and update the board as to what we've defined for an action plan moving forward, and keep you updated on that progress. So there's a link also. We'll skip over the questions. We'll come back to questions. There's a link in there for the comments. That's a PDF of all of the comments of students, staff, and families. It's not broken out by buildings. So what buildings will receive are specific responses from their students if families have identified their particular building, and staff that are identified to those particular buildings. So it's a little more targeted to their specific building. So with that, I can certainly talk about, again, some of the themes I think that we've seen, for staff that, continues to be around communication, recognition, collaboration, workload. There's still some pieces around professional development and behavior, but there's also, I think as I shared previously, some acknowledgement of some areas of growth and some improvement as well. For our students, there's a lot of conversation around engagement, making learning fun, collaborating with their peers, and student support systems, both for social emotional learning and for academics. And then of course there's also a lot of comments about recess, having more recess, and having better food at lunch. Those are common themes that we see in the student results each year. And then for our families, it's communication, it's behavior, but there's also a lot of, when you see in the results, some very high levels of trust. And that's something that will be reflected as I go through the public perception survey as well. So with that, your thoughts, questions, things that you've seen in the comments and in some of the data that we presented.
Do all students take this survey?
So it's not all students. We have to get permission, and that happens at registration.
I mean, age-wise?
Third grade
Third
and up.
grade.
Yeah. And that's been consistent since we started.
So we will, like, they'll come to us with, or I don't know, the district leadership committee will come with a focus for next year.
Yep.
And then we'll discuss, like, what's going to happen for that
So
focus.
then we build out action plans from there, which we'll continue to share with you. And you can see the previous action plans are embedded in a link in there as well.
I'd just like to, I know with the parents and their positives, I think that's a direct reflection on our teachers and support staff, because, I mean, I ran mine because I'm a paper person and it took a long time to go through. But I mean, I think that really reflects on our teachers, because they're they're on the front line with parents and stuff, so.
And I think
Just
you're
kind
going
of
to
a
see
shout out
that
to that.
alignment to the perception survey when I present those results to you as well.
Well, for me, I took my time to read also all the feedback, the comments, and it was really an amazing overall. Most of them are positive comments, whether it's parents, students, and staff. Obviously, we always strive for better, right? That's a human nature. A couple points I noticed. For example, in student feedback and the parents, they talk several times about bullying as an issue. So I'm hoping this will be one of the issues that moving forward will pay attention to maybe. The other thing in the staff area, I remember reading couple feedbacks talking about maybe we need more time and less meeting. Now, no matter what you do, obviously, you cannot be working at perfection or that level, but those are, some of the feedbacks that I took. But overall, I think we are doing very well comparing to the year before and so on. So results are showing from the three groups that we are on, I would say, the right path and so on. But those are a couple things that, stick in my mind when I read the feedback. So.
Thanks for putting all of this together. I know there's a lot of work behind the scenes that goes into that, and to all of the families and staff members and students that participated. I just have a question about, we have like our district leadership team that sits down and really looks at this, and then we have at the building level, opportunities for educators to do that. Do we have any opportunity like that for students to give us feedback in a structured way? And I know that we have different groups within the district. I would like to see a cross section of students from a variety of demographics come to the table and help us think through how can we improve their experience in our buildings. Is there anything that we're doing to kind of work towards that?
Not necessarily anything at a structured district level, but certainly many of our buildings have student leadership teams that they're leveraging to walk through some of these and address some of those concerns. Is it done consistently across all the buildings? No, and that's an area we can improve in for sure.
Yeah, I think that would be impactful. Thank you.
Yeah, along with that then, I think by having a diversity of type of folks will help maybe even the students to see things that they may not have saw from somebody else and stuff too. So it might help with their overall communication as well. And I echo the fact that I'm looking at all of this, and it's very, very well put together, needless to say, and like the time commitment and everything due, but it's also a very lot of information. So it's kind of hard, I think, even for us to try to digest enough to know what questions we really should be asking on. But mine came from some of the comments and then also some of the teachers that I have talked to. It has to do with the professional development area. And what it becomes is some of the more senior teachers seem to think that some of this professional development doesn't necessarily pertain to them because they've been through a lot, and everything. So it's seems almost not necessary, which then comes back to that time allotment, as in to find more time to do other things. Or is there a different, like, possible pathway of a type of coursing or something that they can be doing? And/or some kind of a idea of almost mentorship or something, because some of the senior folks on, how they do compared to the other. But that was the area in question that they just felt more of, I think, at loss, as in where they're at with things.
And I'm certainly happy to respond. I don't know, Joelle, if you want to come up and share too, I would say, I think there's definitely opportunities, and our buildings do this, where they provide multiple pathways, and teachers have some choice in some of the trainings. There's also some pieces that everyone has to have, right? And to ensure that everyone's getting the same message, the same information, and it may be things that we've covered in the past, but it could also be new curriculum adoptions that, we need to make sure everyone has that same amount of information. So I think there's always a little bit of, and there's certainly give and take with that as well.
And I think everything Clint said would have been just what I was going to say, but I would also just add to it, each building there are teams that represent their building. So every building has an environment team, an instruction team, and after each professional development, we always ask for feedback. And so we ask for feedback from every teacher for each session that we do. And then that feedback should go directly to the buildings. And then their team look at that feedback and then make decisions on future professional development. I would say that some of our buildings have offered different types of professional development, that allows teachers more choice on where they choose to go. I would also say that I'm sure there's a lot of professional development, that maybe teachers feel they've already had. So I would say the building has a lot of discretion to look at that feedback and make decisions, and we definitely want feedback from teachers. And then secondly, to the curriculum part of it, and I don't know when we get professional development, there's so much, so it's always hard to know exactly what teachers might be referring to. But as far as the curriculum, we always offer professional development aligned with our adoption, so that we're studying like the most recent research, and it's aligning as we're choosing curriculum. And then in addition to that, the first year when we adopt something, whether it's social studies, science, ELA, we always provide a lot of professional development that initial year. And then the 2 years after that, we provide ongoing professional development as needed by teachers, and they have choice in what that is, of what they need. So we need to look into that, because like a lot of these, it's a big category, so we just want to make sure, that we understand when we're getting feedback, what that specific feedback means, so that when we're making decisions, we're making it on the right things.
Yeah.
So
I know you guys are doing,
Yeah.
a lot with it,
Yeah.
and it's very well appreciated. My other question is it attendance? Are they required to be there? Because I've heard some stories, let's just say, of some that don't bother coming then, being that they don't feel it's,
I think that's something we always monitor. Staff have, certain sick days and professional leave days, or personal leave days. It becomes more of a one-on-one conversation if there's a pattern that's noticed there. But you're right, and other teachers notice that as well.
Right, thank you.
I do have just a quick question. In regards to the staff section, I noticed there's a subsection to paras. Are they involved in the environmental, almost like a leadership role to ensure their voices are being heard?
That's why they're at the district leadership group. And it's also why we do it on the Thursday afternoons, because we can ensure that paras are there, so that it's not just being presented to, one group of staff, that everyone has the opportunity. And that message is really clear to principals. You need to do it when all of your staff can be there.
Good.
So with PD, the buildings can have individual PD, correct? I mean, that it.
Yes.
Is it always, I guess I don't know how to say this right, but focus, is there a district focus? For
Correct.
every PD, and then the buildings can decide?
And then buildings base their PD off of their goals and the work that they need to do.
So do some buildings have more PD than other buildings? Or is it pretty much set?
They have the same amount of time. Again, how they use that time, there's some
But
variation.
they're not I mean, do some buildings take like after-school time for PD and, you know what I'm saying? I guess, or is it pretty much?
No, not for PD. It's
Yeah, I know.
usually falling on those days that we've
that are-
dedicated for them.
Okay,
Now, they may have other meetings after school. that-
right, of course.
Again, and we've heard some of that in the comments as well.
Right, okay.
Great, I'll go. I did notice a couple of themes as I was reading through some of the comments and looking at the surveys as well. So I noticed between families and staff, both mentioned concerns with special education. And I was trying to remind myself too that this was in October, so some of these things have probably been addressed, especially individual concerns, I hope. And then John had mentioned this as well, but the collaboration times, fewer meetings after school, it all kind of seemed to come at a good time because that was one of the focuses of the new calendar adoption. So I'm hoping that we'll solve some of those problems and really stick to that. No meetings Monday through Thursday, or very few, right? Only if needed. I think that we'll solve some of the problems in the comments. I don't know if this has been solved, but I think this is the third year that there have been a lot of student comments on bathroom safety. So we've done some things through infrastructure to try to improve some of that. So just gauging what the security team or the high school is doing about that. I don't know if they're really late to class because they're running to 3 different bathrooms. I don't know, but if that is their experience, that's unfortunate. We should probably be looking closer at that. But I was overall really pleased with many of the responses. One of my favorites, I won't read it because it's this really long comment, and it talks about every concern she has. She talks about her own mental health as a staff person, but what she would do and pour into her kids. And she's going on about all of this, and it kind of felt like, oh man, she needs a lot from us and we're not listening. And then at the end, she was like, I'm basically telling you all this because I've seen it work. So she thanked the surveys, and I don't know if you know what comment I'm talking about, but at the end she just said, because of these surveys, things have gotten so much better, and I see that you're listening. So I think that makes, that one comment for me, like even with all of the areas for improvement that we need to hear, I was like, huh, that is worth like the 1,300 comments that you're gonna read, because it was really good. But a quarter of the people, or a third of the students, quarter staff, quarter families, they all filled out comments, which really isn't, in the big scheme of things, the way the question is worded is, are there things we can do to improve? So maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but if they didn't comment, maybe they think there's nothing to improve, which I would say is pretty great. But I think people know that we're reading these, we're listening, and then they see the work that the district is doing afterwards, and that it's continuous. Like never once we're like, oh, we're improved, and so then we're just done. So I think that that's good that we keep showing up and acknowledging when we're not getting it right all the time too. And then I had a question. So for the action plan within the building teams, there was a student or a teacher nomination that we're looking to do to increase culture and celebrations. Can parents and students also nominate teachers using that form, or is it just staff?
So we have there's kind of two pieces there. One, we have the building level process, and again, that would be up to how the buildings kind of structured that. For the district, we're kind of moving it through, is that open to everyone? I'm not sure that, I know we sent it to all, just to staff. So what you're gonna see shortly, tomorrow, is a monthly newsletter that Matt has been working on. And part of that is a feature, and we're gonna rotate a building, so we're starting with the high school, and we'll kind of work our way through, where we're recognizing staff and our paraprofessionals and, all of our, staff in different ways. And the buildings have the opportunity to nominate and kind of walk through that process, but also highlight some of the great work that's happening at the building, again, as a way to, more at a district level, recognize the good work that's happening.
And I do like that very much, but I also like the fact that like any communication that it goes out to the public, because sometimes I don't think maybe the
And
parents
this will
even
go out to
know,
the
you know what I'm
public.
saying?
It'll
You
go
know?
out to everyone.
Yeah, but I'm just encouraged with that because from some of those comment things that were on there, it just seemed like the communication or what the parents might have thought that the teachers are doing, or the fact that, oh, wow, we have this going on in that, building, or, just showing all of that, I think is a very important, communication period is important.
Well, I would like to echo what you said, Lindsay. Most probably is the same one that I was really impressed by, because for me, when I read that, it was like almost a full plan to deal with everything. If I remember right, I think it's he or she, I don't know, stated like 7 steps, I think, kind of.
That was a different one, but that was good.
Oh, that's a different
Yeah.
one? Okay,
Yeah,
so
that
I
was
thought
great
maybe
too.
you are talking about that. That was
just copy-paste.
really an amazing, I think, plan that if we look at it and consider that, that is giving us really a very good picture of what we need to understand from a staff member. That's, I think, was very comprehensive answer. So, yeah, I thought maybe you were talking
that
about that,
was
but, yeah.
I guess I,
44, I think,
Oh, is that
starts
what
on
it
line 44, yeah.
That was way too far down.
I feel like behavior was obviously another, I think it always will be. I don't know that you'll ever get away from that, but through the survey and through my talking with, I think we need to, I guess one suggestion might be to go back to our behavior protocol, because I know a lot of time and effort was put into that, but I don't know that it looks great on paper, but maybe we need to tweak it and get some more input and make sure that that's actually happening in all buildings. And it sounds like consistency would be helpful from the comments. I know there's a lot of them that it's up to the principal's discretion, which I totally understand to a certain extent, but then I think there's some that should be nope, you cross this line, this is what's gonna happen district-wide, because we have kids moving, obviously we have parents that talk, so I hope that in the district leadership team, we really focus on that and go back to that. And then my other comment was just, there's a lot of things that probably aren't gonna show up as a huge number in the survey, but some really good suggestions and concerns. Are those addressed at all? I mean,
I think
what do
we look
do
at
with
all of those
those?
pieces, and some
Right,
of
no,
those
I
things,
mean, I don't mean,
do happen.
I know you see them all, but I
You know,
mean, is
again,
there?
and some of the challenges, we talk about communication every time. And this is an overgeneralization of what you're saying, but the problem is that communication for one group or one building or one person looks like this, and for somebody else it looks like this. And so as a district, trying to put it into something that we can work on together
Well, I'm
can be a
just
little bit
thinking
of a challenge. But it doesn't mean that we throw out any of
Right.
the ideas because there's only one.
I just wondered if there was a way to report back to, I guess I'm thinking mainly staff, that these things have been looked at and that we're not just.
But I think it's also important that they see those comments and they have that conversation at their building level too.
Correct.
Is this an issue for us? If it is, let's address it.
Because I'm thinking somewhat, one example would be like facility issues that are distinct to one building and a way to make those people feel as though they've
Sure.
been heard as well, I guess is what I'm trying to say, so. But the building level would hopefully, and then take it beyond as needed, would be
Yes.
your suggestion?
Wondering if there might not be an opportunity for us to get some sort of an idea after buildings have had a chance to have those conversations, just to kind of pull together what is the conversation at each building, and then, as a group, that kind of leads the district, what do we do with that information? What information should we know, and what information should the community know has come from these surveys at each building level?
And so we do typically present to you, once we've had some of those district level conversations, we'll have representatives come from that team to talk about, the conversations at their building and the conversations at the district level. So we will do that again.
I did see a lot of improvement too. There are still definitely concerns that need addressed in every building. and you're gonna have that. But last year and the year before, I feel like we saw very clear themes per building. Like we knew where we needed to put a lot of effort. And I don't think there was a building that stood out as like, all right, we're in crisis mode and they need support. I didn't get that feeling from any of these, and there wasn't like that call out. I think last year I was even like, I think somebody from facilities needs to be at the early learning center for these meetings. They need to be part of the conversations. And I think progress was acknowledged in those areas. So some things probably never, like, you know, we just cannot do. And they'll still show up, and I love that, but I haven't seen that call or that urgency in them, so that's good too.
It actually brought me to a point that I thought about too, is sometimes on the comments, I found myself going, well, what building are they talking about? You know, because they weren't actually being real specific. So then that becomes hard for you to try to figure out what building may that have been a problem with or something. So I don't know if should be a
And
way
again,
on the
they're gonna
thing
get
to
that
say.
specific to their building and be able to see those comments. We just list them
Yeah.
all because those were all of the comments.
Right, right. But I mean, but it doesn't specifically, the comments didn't necessarily say what.
We don't sort them by building.
Oh, okay.
They do go to the buildings
They go-
in that.
Okay, okay. Just wanted to make sure, because I noticed that, yeah.
Well, and, you know, again, I would say, and John, I appreciate your comment, it is a continuous improvement process. We're not there, we've got work to do, we're gonna always have work to do. And just a reminder that it's easier not to do this. It takes a level of vulnerability to say, here's where we are. Those are the comments. They're not easy to read all the time, right? And especially, you know, and I've said this before, there are times where I'm working my way through it, and I just got to close the lid of my computer and walk away from a bit, come back, read it again. Usually by the third time, I start processing that comment differently, and what does that really mean, and how can we support that better? So there is an improvement process in here that helps us get better, and it's something that, you know, obviously we've been committed to, and appreciate the board's commitment to that as well. I want to thank Michelle for helping to put the presentation together. Also, David Svensson and Scott Comstock do a lot of work on the back end to make sure all that data comes together. We're pulling through all that. We're redacting when individual names are used. All those pieces are really critical. So, you know, I appreciate all the efforts that go into getting it into the presentation that you see this evening. So with that, we will be back to share updates and next steps and continue to work through that process with you.
All right. We will move into the community perception results.
Survey part 2. All right, so I'm going to walk through this. This was a community and parent perception survey that was done early this fall. Something we did as a part of Collaborate Muscatine. As you know, the focus has been on housing and education, and one of the questions and the conversations have been, we have this feeling about how the public perceives our school district, but we don't have a lot of like hard data around that. Morris Leatherman is a company that I've worked with previously in Minnesota, and they do perception surveys all around the Midwest, and certainly a big chunk of them in Minnesota with some very large districts. They do it, I feel like, a really good job, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is. It is a phone survey. They do landlines and cell phones. The difference is they have a bank of callers that will reach out, and they'll just leave people messages and say, hey, we want to talk to you about the school district. Give us a call back, set up a time. So it's not this like, you got to answer the phone and talk right away. So we'll kind of step through these results here, starting with the methodology and some of the demographics. The total number of responses is 761 interviews total, and essentially that broke down to a total of 500 overall for the community, but also 400 that represent just parents. So there's a little bit of overlap, and that total gets you to 761. Now, I will also say in fairness, Peter Leatherman is way better at presenting this information than I am. So I'm gonna walk through this the best I can based on the presentation he gave. I will also tell you, when we have our next joint council meeting with the city and the county, the goal is to have him probably virtually to present this information, because he does a lot better of answering, you know, some of the questions. But it gives you an opportunity to at least kind of get a preview of this, and if you have specific questions as we walk away, I'll certainly follow up with Peter to make sure that either I can follow up with an answer, or when he presents again, we have that opportunity. One of the pieces I think that is important, the average interview time is 14 minutes. So when you think about 761 people spending 15 minutes of their time to talk about the school district, I think that's pretty impressive. And the non-response level of 6.5%. So we really have a really good, strong survey here. So demographics, you can kind of see, it'll show the blue results are the overall group, and then the yellow results are specific to parents. Okay? So that's why when you look at households with children, 100% of our parents are a household with children, right? When you look at overall, about 70% are empty nesters or don't have kids in the school anymore. And that's one of the things we've talked about, right? When you have more than 70% of your community that really doesn't have a connection to school, again, that's where that communication piece is really important. So it breaks it down, how long they've lived in the community, the type of house they live in, all those pieces. The next demographics is high school level, some college graduate, financially stressed, and also breaks down what city wards they come from. So you can, again, see kind of how all of that broke out. The last page of demographics deals with age brackets, male and female. I think one piece of interesting data there is nearly half of all these respondents have a relative in the school district. It just tells you how closely the school district is connected to the community. Again, and about 42% are either retired, stay at home, or are unemployed. Okay. So again, you get a good breakdown of kind of how the people who responded represent the community. Quality of education, and this really, again, represents, kind of how are we doing? Are we excellent? Are we good? Only fair or poor? So you can see pretty consistent, 73% excellent or good overall, and I think it was 74% of parents. And so what I can tell you is previously, and Peter spoke to this when we had the opportunity to meet with him, it used to be kind of like 90%. You wanted to be at 90% to really be in that, like, where you want to be. And he said, so that was pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, that number has dropped significantly. So right now, 75% is about the norm. And so we're right at kind of where the norm of kind of anywhere else is kind of feeling at this point. He said just coming out of the pandemic, people just have not been as enthusiastic about their schools, but it's starting to grow again. So we're starting to see that shift. The other thing that he pointed out is when you look at, there's only 3 or 4% who responded with being poor, right? That it's not good. And so, again, I think given we're kind of at the norm, it's a pretty positive result for us. The nice thing about these surveys, you don't do them every year. Come back, check every 3 or 4 years and kind of see how we're doing. So one of the things we talked about, some of the connection to the survey, when people were asked what they liked most about the school district, good teachers came out number one, both for parents and for the community. It's academics, it's a variety of programs, and there's various ways academics kind of gets broken out in there. So those really are the common themes of strength. Overall, really strong about our teachers, and you'll see that later, and we certainly heard that in our DDE results as well. And again, a variety of programs and academics as well. The most serious issue facing the district, and really the top outcome, was nothing. The lack of funding was kind of the next most serious issue, related overall and by parents. One of the things, as you kind of go through that list, the poor spending at like 10% overall of the community, that was one of the things Peter said is like a typical benchmark in every single community where he does the survey, that ends up being about 10%. The one piece he did say is that nothing being the most serious issue is double the norm that they see anywhere, right? And the way Peter explained that is you have this really strong group of booster parents and community members who just really see good things happening in the district. So that was kind of his way of explaining why that is high. Then the next piece is really a comparison of the district first. That first column is to neighboring school districts. And you can see overall about 85%, and it's about the same, a little bit higher for parents that were better or the same as neighboring districts. One of the things that Peter pointed out, a lot of times he looks at those ratios of the worse to better, those kind of strong responses in either direction. And for our overall, that was 3-to-1, see it as better versus worse. And nearly 4-to-1 of our parents see it better to worse. For the private and homeschool, you can see overall, and then you see the difference with our parents. And that's where Peter talked about our parents see the benefit of and are more positive about being in the school district. And then I think one of the pieces that really stood out to me that I was really happy to see is compared to 4 years ago, the perception that we're better or the same as we were 4 years ago. And again, if you look at better to worse, it's 3-to-1. And then nearly 5-to-1 of our parents. So this perception that we are moving in the right direction and there's some good things happening over the last 4 years. And I believe Peter said those responses for the 4 years ago was about twice what they see in other communities. So again, a positive piece to share. Meeting the learning needs, and then this question is, are we meeting the learning needs of all students, most students, some students, very few, or unsure? And you can see we're kind of in that 70-80% range. And again, for the all students being in that 34 to 40 range is right in the ballpark of where he's seeing those responses everywhere. Obviously, there's very few people who think we're meeting the needs of hardly any students. So there is some positive pieces there. One of the things he talked about is because they've been doing these type of surveys for so long, when you ask who of those students that we aren't meeting the needs, whether it's the most and some, it used to be, it's kind of changed over time. Several decades ago, it would have been gifted students. Then it kind of shifted to kind of the average student or the middle. And right now, since the pandemic, the focus would be on underachieving or struggling students, right? And that correlates to kind of this next set of data about concern from the pandemic with learning loss. And you can still see for our community, there's still a lot of concern about the impact of that had on learning. And he did say that our results are higher than they're seeing other places in terms of the concern around the pandemic and learning loss. Then we get into some perceptions. So kind of walking through this, and this can be a little confusing at first, but think of the top two bar graphs as together. That first question is, do we spend our resources effectively and efficiently. And it shows overall, and then it shows parents. Then the next two is the district, are we a good investment for the taxpayer dollar? That's overall, and then parents. And then, do I trust the district to do the right thing, make the right decisions? That's overall and parents. So you can kind of see how those three sections pair out. And again, walking through that, in every section, when you look at our agreement, we're about 10 points or higher than the norm of how other districts are responding. So that there's more positivity in spending our dollars effectively and efficiently, that we're a good investment, and that the community trusts us to do the right thing. Again, really positive results. The next group, again, in that same kind of format, are you satisfied with the decision-making of the district? That's overall, and then parents, and then does the district do a good job in involving parents and the community in decision-making? And so kind of in that satisfied with decision-making, we're right kind of in the norm of where other districts respond. The good job in involving parents in the community, that is, the norm is in the low 70s, and so we're above 80 there. According to Peter, that's some of the highest responses they've seen anywhere of people feeling like we've done a good job. So the way he kind of framed that is our community and our parents are feeling empowered in the work that's happening at the district. The next question was, is the district adequately funded? And the majority are saying no, and certainly, I don't know that I would disagree with that, but certainly something to monitor, right? In fact, you know, it's interesting, our parents were a little higher in, that we are adequately funded compared to the general community. Most important indicator of high quality education, and this is for the overall response, so this is everybody included. And it's around our graduates moving on to, whether it's work, post-secondary, whatever that is, preparing them kind of for the next step. It's test scores and broad curriculum that are really the highest responses. Then they go through and they rate the district on these indicators, so you can kind of see how, whether we're favorable or unfavorable to those indicators. We're on the favorable side for all of those, and we'll talk about this later. You know, one of the things that Peter mentioned, when you think about how do we boost and move perception of the district, how do we move more of that group to good and excellent, that question of quality at the beginning, he said it's through, you know, continuing to focus on graduates prepared for success and test scores. And that'll come through with parents as well. Those are the two areas that if we really want to continue to move that perception, those would be the areas we'd want to focus on. Then it goes through that same process, but just with parents and how they responded. Very similar to the overall. It's graduates moving on. It's curriculum, it's test scores. Again, there's a little bit of variance between the curriculum and test scores pieces, but when you think about the top three, those were very similar. And then again, then they would rate us favorably. And again, we saw some more positive favorability there, and very typical to what you would see in other districts. The next question relates to concerns about curriculum, and as you can see, overall, and our parents really don't have any concerns with our curriculum. And there are little pieces of whether it's too liberal, what are the other pieces that they're concerned about, but in comparison to the no group, it's very, very small. So again, consistent to what they're, you know, seeing in other places, but the vast majority of our public and our parents are not concerned about the curriculum that we're using in the classroom. And then describing the district overall, again, this was that overall group, excellent teachers, 92%. And you can see a lot of very positive responses there. I do have to say, the one at the bottom, technology leader, Scott was a little concerned that that was related to him, and I had to, no, it's really about being a leader in technology as a district. That's the response. It wasn't particular to any one person. One of the pieces that Peter did share is that there has been a significant shift in the perception around technology. Was, years ago, you couldn't get enough, like technology, technology, technology. And he goes back far enough in some of his work that he remembers then in Y2K, where there was the concern about what would happen in technology. And I know, Mason, you're looking a little concerned, but yeah, there was, it was a unique time back then, and what would happen when everything rolled over. And so there was it kind of dipped then, and then it started growing again. And then it's dipped significantly since the pandemic. And really the concern around using it as an option to keep kids out of classrooms, right? That's kind of the general fear there. So it's not necessarily unique that technology is scoring lower there, and you'll see that in the kind of the most and least important. And again, this is how they see the most and least important overall, preparing all students for success. A lot of things we've seen, obviously technology is not, it's kind of one of those areas that's seen as least important. And then we'll go back through and do that specific to parents, and you'll see those responses even stronger than the overall community with excellent teachers and preparing successful individuals, just a lot of positive responses there. And then very similar to the most and least important that we saw overall. And again, back to this from parents, Peter just categorized this as very strong ratings for our district. Then we get into credible sources of information about the school district. And so you've got the website, district mailings, word of mouth, email, newspaper, teachers and staff, social media, so on, and the parent app. Some of these are kind of linked together because really for our parents, email and the parent app comes as an email anyway. So there's probably a stronger response there, but certainly they're leveraging our website as well. But and we'll see this in a couple of other results here soon, how much information and how powerful it is for parents when they're hearing from our teachers and staff, right? And that falls back to some of the DDE comments around communication. They really value what our teachers and staff say, okay? And then the most effective ways to receive information. One was credible source. This is the most effective way to receive it. Newsletter, website, email, social media, so on. And Peter kind of broke it down. About 40% of people want to hold something in their hand, and about 60% want to push a button, okay? He said it leans electronic, but it's close, okay? And then, again, sources of information, whether it's used a lot or some, and you can see the overall is, oops, I missed a spot here. There we go. Sources of information, you see the top one, the blue and light blue, and then parents underneath that, so they're kind of grouped together. And again, one thing you can see is the importance, and this is higher than the norm they're seeing in other places, of the information they get from employees and from staff. He said it indicates the power of the grapevine, right? But also, again, when they think so highly of our staff, when they talk to them, they value that. Then there's a question about Muscatine Community College, very positive in terms of how that is perceived by the community and our parents. And then the importance to provide students the opportunity to earn college credit in high school. And obviously, very important. One of the things that Peter mentioned in this particular slide is it's so strong that it's almost not important, it's almost perceived as a right. And certainly we've seen focus and have tried to do a lot of things to ensure, and we track that, it's part of our accountability system as well, is the percentage of students that are earning some college credit while in high school, which is about 75%. The next question is credible sources of information about the community. Now, this is about the community, not necessarily about the district, okay? And again, one of the pieces that he did call out is our parents with social media. That's a higher result than they would see in other places. Again, as a credible source of information about the community. And then the most effective ways, and again with our parents being social media the most effective way to receive community information, that's 3 times higher than the norm that they see in other places. And then the next question, do you feel safe in the community? Extremely positive response here. I did share that with some of our city and police department staff. I think it was certainly a positive response there. And then the last piece is just characteristics, and this is specifically from our parents, favorable to unfavorable, and you can see very high, safe and secure environment, quality teaching staff, variety of course offerings, our music, character development, extracurriculars. Again, the areas that are driving perceptions relates to what we've talked about before when you look down there. It's our test scores, which really also translate into some degree in personalizing education, making sure it's focused on individual students. And so those kind of align to some of the pieces we've talked about previously. And again, asking parents, are you most connected to, and they're most connected to the neighborhood first, and then kind of a split between the school and city, and then about 10% that were something else. We asked specifically around childcare. We know that's an issue in our community. However, the response probably wasn't what we expected, with the vast majority saying no. Now, it could be because we're asking parents who have kids in school, right? So maybe they aren't needing childcare the way people who are outside of that would. But again, that was the response we got. And then the last question is just around Spark. And what you can see, about 2/3 of response of our parents were aware of it. About 25% use it, and there's a third that were not aware of it. So again, an area that we've done a lot of work to promote and will continue to promote. So with that, I'll open it up for questions, remembering that I'm not Peter Leatherman, but I will do the best I can based on those conversations, and certainly it'll be an opportunity for us to follow up with him as well. What I will say again overall is that Peter was very clear. These are very good results, and we should feel really good about them. And I do think there's some alignment to what we've seen in the DDE results. And again, most importantly, that we're kind of moving in the right direction. We really have a solid foundation of trust. They trust the finances. They feel like they're being involved. The community is involved in decision making. So it's really how do we continue to move the needle in perceptions, and it's around test scores and continued opportunities for academics. So with that, questions?
Do these survey results go out to the community? Can they see them?
Yeah, so these are attached to this presentation. Again, we'll share it with the Joint Council. I'm going to try to do little bits in my superintendent updates, as we get into, certainly I didn't have a lot of opportunity at the Collaborate Muscatine Summit because we had just gotten that. I just did a little sprinkle in there. As we think about our all-staff kickoff, these are, again, more data we want to continue to put in front of our community and in front of our staff.
Thank you again for that information. Yes, it is quite encouraging, you know, to see. The only thing I had on was, did they mean mail newsletter as an actual paper mail?
Yeah, some districts mail like a quarterly or a yearly kind of something that hits all the mailboxes. It's gotten very expensive to do.
Yeah,
So you don't
yeah,
see as much
yeah.
of it anymore.
Yeah, that's why I automatically asked that, because it just seems kind of would be a rare occurrence now. But it's interesting on how many seem to think they needed that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I did notice that this is maybe not our normal group of stakeholders that we would get responses from, so I liked that it looks a little different. Like, I noted that a majority of the individuals are making over $150,000 in their household, and empty nesters, which are stakeholders in our district for a lot of other reasons than necessarily some of the parents. So I think that could play to why some of those important things or areas of need were a little different than what we would have guessed they'd
Sure.
say. Because the childcare one stopped me too. I was like, wait, what?
But remember, that childcare was specific just to parents.
Just to parents,
It wasn't
right.
the
So
overall.
that's when I think in our
Yeah.
minds, we kind of trick ourselves to think affordable childcare.
Yeah.
And if that's not necessarily a concern based on the income levels of the house, you could answer differently too. I was curious, was this only provided to English-speaking homes, or did it,
They they have translators as well.
Okay.
Yes.
they just didn't collect that data, do you know?
It gets and I don't have a number
Yeah.
of how many they did, but they certainly have the capability to do that in
That's
multiple
good. I was
languages.
just curious. And do we send any mailings out?
We don't really know. We do, most of our stuff is electronic.
Yeah.
And I think, again,
Which is serving the parents.
some of that communication has changed because
Yeah.
I would say, you know, you go back 10, 20 years, your local newspaper probably would have had a much higher response. Well, we don't have a local newspaper anymore.
Right.
We still have the Muscatine Journal, but there's no one here locally anymore. Right? So that's certainly changing how we get information. I know it's a lot of information thrown at you, but again, I think it's really good information, and I want to make sure you have an opportunity to digest it, and certainly feel free to follow up with questions. If, once we have Peter scheduled, if you have specific questions, let me know so I can give those to Peter to make sure he can at least be prepared to address those.
Do you have any information on how the contact information was pulled for the families, just with cell phones? I feel like it's so much different than,
So they
landlines
have
that you could guarantee would be in a
a data set, and Peter can explain that they purchased a long time ago and have a lot of information on landlines, cell numbers. I can't answer that as well as he can, but that's certainly a question that I'm sure will come up. It is something we asked about. I just don't have specifics as to how all that works.
More questions? All right, we'll move to the superintendent update. You again.
Me again. All right, I'll keep this a little bit shorter. Just a couple pieces I wanted to update on. I did just want to follow up. We've continued to we had our third AI meeting and have continued to work through that process. We have several more coming up over the next several months, really focusing on first kind of getting to know and understand AI. We spent some time specific to Gemini, which is Google's AI tool, because that's built into our system here, so we have access to it, and because it's internal, that information doesn't get shared out. So one of the things you worried about with ChatGPT, if you're putting information out there, they're gonna take it, right? We cannot put student data, we have data privacy rules, but within Gemini, because it's internal within our system, that does not get shared. And so we're kind of focusing on using that as a tool within the district, but there's a bunch of other tools out there. So we spent some time at the last meeting really talking about, what tools and what processes do we have to evaluate, what's good. And again, the big piece of that is, how does it protect, how does it align to data privacy requirements? So we'll continue to move forward with that. Just want to keep you posted as we keep moving through that process. And then just the last piece is around the legislative session. Today I sent my first legislative update. And so we'll just, as each week, and we'll get into a period of time that there probably won't be stuff every week. There's a lull at times. But just, I'm going to try to do a better job of keeping our staff up to date on some of these, some of the bills and some of the issues. There was a little podcast in there about 10 minutes long. Did anybody listen to that podcast? I see one, you're shaking your head, a couple of heads
Great.
nodding.
It was great.
It's 10 minutes. It really does a nice job of breaking it down, but in all transparency, I created it with AI. So you can, in Google Gemini, there's a piece that Scott showed me called Notebook. I can attach, so if I get an email from our UEN or IASB or our school administrators of Iowa, and we get a number of those, kind of updates each week, I can put them in there, and then it will pull through all of that information, and you click a button that says audio overview, and it creates a podcast. And there's two people, and they talk back and forth, and they say, it's like two people talking regular, but they do a really nice job of kind of breaking down some of the information to make it easy to understand. So I had shared it with directors last week and shared it with you as well, and then shared it with staff today. So it won't be a podcast every week, but it certainly, we'll continue to update you as those things, because there's a lot happening. We continue to hope that education becomes less of a focus, and that's not going to be the case again this year. So as it relates to property tax and getting some changes there, as it relates to school funding, and there'll be a number of bills related to schools and classrooms that we'll have to navigate as we move through the process. So, any questions?
I'm going to request the podcast every week. I asked where you got it or found it. I thought it was really great, and I found it very easy to follow along with them and listen to it. I thought it was great.
It did a really nice job. So, and again, one of the things we'll have to just monitor is what new information and how is that changing over time will need to be the focus moving forward.
Do you automatically sign everyone up for the Iowa Finance Authority email list with all of those
I
bullet
don't
points
know
too?
that
Does
we
everyone get
automatically
that?
do that.
Okay.
But if somebody isn't, we can get you signed up.
Yeah, because if you're not, I would request that, because I try to listen to those, and Margaret does a really nice
She does a
job,
really
and
nice
then she always recaps it if you miss it, and so that's really helpful to
Yep.
stay engaged too.
One of the things that I would like to say, I attended a webinar from the Iowa School Board Association last week, in particular about the expected changes of school finances and like the SSA and because they want to control the property tax, the idea of also covering $42.8 million on top of that SSA, and they talk about what it means when they do it this way, if it's not part of the SSA, and how it affects and the effect of it. So I encourage everyone to, if you didn't have a chance to attend that webinar, try to maybe watch that, because I assume they put them after that on their website, right? And people can go and watch those webinars. That was, I think, a great webinar that explains almost everything, expectations and so on, for this year. So.
Yeah, I think there'll be some great conversation. Certainly the governor's proposal to provide additional funds to offset the budget guarantee for districts in declining enrollment. And again, that's kind of a one-time funding. And I think the conversations will be, if you took that money and just put it onto SSA, what impact, I mean, that would also impact reducing the property tax burden. And for us, you know, we've heard a lot of conversation around 2%. Again, whether we'll get there, we'll see. But if it was 3%, we wouldn't have budget guarantee, right? So even just that, you know, additional amount for us makes a big difference.
The numbers I heard that at 2%, it will be 199 school districts on budget guarantee. That's basically the numbers they share, yeah.
And I would also say, you know, as we're getting into February, getting into budget season, certainly, you know, enrollment has played a big key for all districts, but certainly for us. I should have by the end of this week, the enrollment study will give us a little more indication of kind of where we're going moving forward, and how that will impact us long-term.
The announcement portion of our agenda, we have January 29th, 2-hour early dismissal, January 30th, in-service, February 9th, we'll have community conversations followed by our regular board meeting, and then February 13th is the Muskie Booster Cake Auction. So, all right, we will move into a closed session before we fully adjourn, so we'll need a roll call to do that.
I can do that.
No respond aye.
Got that. Director Cooney? To go into the closed session, we're taking roll call.
Aye or nay to go into closed session.
I'm sorry, when two people talk at once, sometimes I'm having trouble with my hearing aid. One person say it.
We are moving into closed session.
Oh, closed
so
session.
she's
Oh, so-
calling for roll call.
Okay.
Aye or
Okay, then is it present? Aye? Aye.
DeBeat,
Aye.
Dolby,
Aye.
Koff,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye.
We can now go into
All
closed
right,
session.
perfect. We will move into the closed session and we'll reconvene here when we're finished.